Coming up on the Unmasking Minds, Empowering Mental Health Conversations podcast.
What if the wife or the girlfriend or, the wife in this case, what if she finds out? What does that mean for me? Or what if others find out that I'm in this situation,
We are revisiting a controversial topic we brought you before. Women in relationships with married men.
For a lot of people, it's that ultimate self-esteem, like, oh, nope, I got him. He's not yours anymore, he's mine. Or he's ours, right?
But this time, we are getting a different generation's perspective.
In my generation, the idea of taking someone's man is like the ultimate self-esteem, right?
You don't want to go anywhere because all of this is coming up on the podcast. Welcome to the Unmasking Minds, Empowering Mental Health Conversations podcast. I'm Anthony Redmond, and I'm thrilled to have you here with us as we embark on a journey to break the stigma surrounding mental health and ignite a powerful wave of transformation. In today's episode, we'll revisit a topic we told you about before, women in relationships with married men. Before we introduce our guests, let's take a look at previous episodes that include this topic.
Me being a woman, I would have to think about me putting myself in the position or being in that other woman's shoes. And it's just something that, being a woman, being supportive, you know what I'm saying? Not causing somebody else that pain.
She makes me feel what I don't feel at home. That's one perspective. Maybe the other perspective is I just need to have somebody that I feel like I can control.
Such a controversial topic, and I really wanted to make sure we got everyone's perspective on it, which is why today's guests are from a different generation. Joining me to help me navigate these conversations is Sweeney, Chelsi Modest, and Capri Ervin. Welcome, ladies. Welcome to the Unmasking Minds, Empowering Mental Health Conversations podcast. I'm really pleased that you are here, and thank you for helping me to navigate this podcast show on this topic.
Thank you for having me. Yes, great.
Capri, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Capri. I have been married for 6 years. We just celebrated our anniversary in January. I have a lovely 2-year-old who runs my life, okay? That's where most of my time is spent. And when I'm not taking care of her, I work for the state of Michigan where I train new child welfare specialists. I love reading. I'm an avid reader. I'm also an event planner. I specialize in weddings, and yeah, that's me.
Okay, where do you attend college?
Yes, I went to the University of Michigan, go Blue, where I studied cultural anthropology. And for me, what that meant is a different way of understanding people, right? So rather than understand them by assessments and things like that, I like to understand people in their environments and their community. And that, for me, helps me understand the person in a more effective way. So I thought that I was going to join the FBI when I graduated college. But I met a group of fourth graders at a middle school in Ypsilanti they tugged on my heart and led me through the direction of helping people. So I've worked with middle school girls, elementary girls. I worked at various nonprofits. If I wasn't working with the families, I've worked for the families, helping them to get mentors. And then I also worked through Children's Protective Services for a minute. I'm just passionate about people and families, and I really love what I get to do now because I get to work with professionals and helping them to coach them to really learn and understand what it's like to be a professional working with families, especially in this day and age.
Okay, Chelsi. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Chelsi Modest. I am from Detroit, born and raised. I attended the University of Michigan, and I have an undergrad from the University of Michigan, so the Ross School of Business and Bachelor of Business Administration, and then I also have a Master's of Accounting. So my day job, I am a certified public accountant, but as a part of that, I also get the opportunity to be a mentor and to be involved in different programs to bring up the next crop of students and to get them into this field. There's only 2 or 3% of the certified public accountants are Black. So being able to be a part of that change and be a face and be a representative in that field of how you can be successful means a lot to me. So I definitely love being involved in that. I am in a long-term relationship, so not married yet, but we just celebrated 5 years. And I don't have a child yet, but I like to think that my dog Jax is my child. So he's a 4-year-old golden doodle. He is very energetic and also kind of runs my life. So everything revolves around Jax. He gets what he wants. He's very spoiled, and I'm proud of that. So a little bit about me.
Great. Kia?
Hi, I'm Kia Sweeney, and I'm from Detroit as well. I grew up on the west side, went to Cass Tech High School. I went to University of Michigan, Ann Arbor for undergrad. I did a deal that was called brain behavior and cognitive science. So I was really fascinated in just like why people do what they do and what makes them keep doing it. I was passionate about substance use, for example, like how do you overcome that? Like if you love your family, like how do you, fight addiction and things like that. So that's what kind of led me down that path, and I wanted to figure out how to apply it in a larger context around medicine, around social work. I was kind of all over the place in terms of where I wanted to end. So what I ended up doing was going into a dual master's program for social work and public health, and I became a licensed social worker, and I used those degrees. Actually, I did a little bit of everything. I did health education work, I did nonprofit work. A lot of my career was spent, though, actually working with adolescent girls and young women, just around holistically helping them become who they want to become. So how do you fight the stereotypes? How do you overcome the obstacles, the barriers that things will throw at you? How do you survive if you are labeled a minority in a predominantly white institution, or if you grew up in a predominantly black community and you're seeing things that you want a different lifestyle? How do you navigate that? So for me, it's just been trying to help people get to where they want to go to, and then how do I do that? So I ended up settling in on deciding to follow my dream, which was to go to medical school. So I'm currently entering my 3rd year of medical school at Wayne State School of Medicine. And right now, I'm also doing part-time therapy work. And so my life is a little interesting right now. I'm currently single, but dating. Mm-hmm. And my heart's desire is that God delivers me an amazing husband. That's my prayer, is actually he prepares me for marriage and prepares that person for marriage, and that we find each other, and that he will bless me one day to be able to have a child. I have over 25 nieces and nephews. So I love children. They mean a lot to me. Capri's child means a lot. So that's a little bit about me.
So your area of medicine, your study, what area are you focusing on?
So my heart is driving me towards family medicine. You'll get to decide during residency where you will want to spend the rest of your career. Mm-hmm. So 3rd year, you're actually rotating through every specialty of medicine. So you're going to do dermatology, you're going to do surgery, you're going to do orthopedics, you're going to do like everything. Mm-hmm. But right now, my interest is in family medicine or psychiatry, because that mental health piece is so important to me. And I, even just my own life story, or just understanding how like self-esteem and like confidence plays a huge role in the opportunities that you have in life and where you end up going. And I just feel like mental health has to be addressed for a person to fully be healthy, physically, spiritually, everything. So those are the 2 fields.
Agree with you 100%. Thank you, ladies, for being a part of this show. And I'm just happy that you're here. Okay, I'm gonna jump right in. Okay. And I don't know who's going to answer first. Okay. Why do you think? First of all, let me explain to my viewer. It's a different generation. Mm-hmm. I want to hear from your perspective, what you see from your generation. Why do women stay involved with men are married, or men are in a serious committed relationship with another woman? Why do you think women even play around with this?
Whew, that's loaded. I think I'll start. One thing that I've really been playing around with or thinking about, ever since you and I talked about, us joining this podcast, is the culture that we live in, right? The number one thing, the first thing that came to mind is City Girls. Because when City Girls, they're a rap group for my folks who don't know, when they first came into like the music scene, the first song they dropped was I Will Take Your Man, right? So I think that in my generation, the idea of taking someone's man is like the ultimate self-esteem, right? Oh, you had something because I, X, Y, Z, whatever it is, I've been able to take that from you, so now I'm the one that looks good. Even if it's not long term, even if it's not permanent, the fact that I can do that, I can take that from you, means that I have something more than you. Though, of course, we know, as we'll explore on this podcast, that the long-term effects for that person, you don't really have them. But I think that our culture has caught on to that, and they're sucked their teeth in it. So I feel like for a lot of people, it's that ultimate self-esteem, like, oh, nope, I got him. He's not yours anymore. He's mine. Or he's ours, right? And some of our, it's all in our music, right? From the City Girls, even from R&B music. SZA, she talks about my man is her man is your man too, right? So like the fact that 3 people are sharing a man, and people sing it to the top of their lungs, right? So I feel like it's everywhere, and it's in Instagram, it's in our music. The idea that what you have is yours, or we're supposed to share. I don't think it's very different from our grandma's generation of what did she say? Shirley, my name is Barbara, and our man is cheating on us, right? So we taking it way back. So I feel like it's that culture and that false sense of self-esteem.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely, at least for our generation, it's definitely what people are inundated with daily, from the music, from Instagram, from, just having the ability to say that you have one up on someone else, or to say that clearly, to esteem yourself by saying that clearly I have something that she doesn't, because that's why he keeps coming to me. That's why he's seeking me, because I possess the quality or qualities that she doesn't. And so that then feeds into why you stay, because now you're getting fulfilled. Especially if their love language is words of affirmation, or if they lack self-esteem, that definitely plays into why you continue to go, because that's where that's getting fed. So I think it's a combination of, just what, innately we as humans need, that affirmation, and where you can get it from. And sometimes it's not always the right place. But then also society confirming that that's okay, and that is kind of the ultimate, way to prove, your self-worth, or to prove your self-esteem. So it's definitely embedded in our culture nowadays, and we see it a little bit more. I like the point that you brought up of it's not anything new, but it's definitely shown its head in a different way over time.
Yeah. All right, Kia, your perspective on this?
You all had amazing perspectives, and I try to think about this too. So first, I think for me it was challenging to even think like, why would someone do that? Because I want so bad to like have a partner that's mine. I don't want to share that partner with someone else. But then I thought about how sometimes it can start off as deception. Like, let's say you do not know, and now your heart is attached to someone. And let's say you are believing the words they're telling you. Let's say they're saying, oh, I'm going to get a divorce, or I'm going to leave that person eventually, or giving you different excuses. And depending on your own values and your own level of self-esteem, you might say, well, I guess I can deal with this, or I can wait it out. It's going to work out. He's going to leave her eventually. So I've seen that perspective, and I've also seen how sometimes lies and guilt and all that stuff can just get people wrapped up into these long-term relationships where you're like, how did we end up here? And so I think it could be a combination of self-esteem issues. I think also depending on if you're a person who you feel like, I just can do what I want with you, and when I'm done with you, I don't have to take you home. So some people might find that it's convenient for their lifestyle, depending on where they are in their lives or their own values. But I do think society has made it where it's not frowned upon the same way it may have been, and I think gender plays a role. So I think in the past it was almost tolerated or accepted if a male was the one doing the cheating, and I think women have almost tried to like flip the script and say, well, we should be able to do it too. So the double standards around that has been interesting to kind of I guess observe or witness. But yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts on it. I'm not exactly sure why people do it, but I have theories.
Okay, all right. So you've been doing private work and counseling. Has this situation ever came across it has. How, as you dissect that, your thoughts
So the situation in which has come up to me is a couple who is currently married, but in a previous marriage, the male had done a lot of cheating. So the current wife wasn't sure if she could trust him to not do that to her, despite him trying to say he would never do that or he had learned his lesson and him explaining why he used to do it. I thought that was interesting. But so it was from his perspective, not from a woman saying that she had, decided to step out into her marriage. But people have said they thought about it. So I can speak from the perspective of why people have thought about it, and I was just speaking on that a minute ago, is that sometimes people end up feeling like if they've been hurt so much in their own dating experience and feeling like it's never going to work out, and why keep putting my heart and soul into believing I'm going to have this like fairy tale relationship, if there's a person who's feeding a need that I have, whether it's sexually, whether it's emotionally or whatever, and you know that you have access to that person, even if it's only for a finite amount of time, sometimes people decide because of their past trauma or whatever they're going through to just settle for what they can get. And it's unfortunate, and I've seen the pain that can do to people and why they end up staying in it, because it's for them, it's better than the pain they had before, being alone and sitting with their own thoughts. At least they know, this weekend I got this person versus I don't have nobody this other weekend, so I'm going to settle for this on this weekend. And if you don't get out of that, then that could easily be what you do for the rest of your life, which is why I think therapy is so important. Because I do think a lot of it is people have past trauma they've never dealt with, and they're looking for someone to heal them instead of trying to heal themselves or to go to God or to figure out how to move forward. They're looking for people to fill these voids in their lives, and they end up in these really complex, entangled relationships that they can't figure out how to get themselves untangled from. So.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. One thing that I was thinking about earlier and that you brought up was the trauma, and I also think the fear behind it, right? Like you say, when you are with somebody who you already know that they have a home relationship, there's nothing to risk. You don't have to, it's not as much to risk, right? Like, that y'all more than likely won't move in together. You know that you are, that person won't be there anymore, always rather. It takes away some of that fear, and I feel like there's a lot of fear-based relationships going around now. A lot of fear-based decisions that we make, the fear of disappointment, the fear of being let down. So I heard that and what you were saying. I think that's a new perspective that you brought up, and I've been thinking about recently, is just the fear behind it, right? Or even if the man, for example, who's seeking a relationship, he maybe doesn't leave his partner because he knows that there's comfort there, right? So he too fears having to start over, or fearing that, he'll get hurt the same way again if he gives all of himself. So I think that's a point worth considering too, like the fear and the trauma behind it.
Yeah, one other thing you mentioned is being in a situation where maybe that happened to you. You were on the other end. You were on the receiving end, and your spouse or partner cheated on you. So now, if you were to do it, it's almost like you're doing it almost out of spite of they did this to me, so I'm gonna do it to others, or hurt people hurt people. Yeah. And so you could start that way as well, of this was taken from me, and so why should anybody else have that as well? Is what I thought about. That was good. Yeah.
That statement, hurt people hurt other people, it plays out way more than we realize.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, you don't even know what's behind the hurt, what's behind the emotion, and you just continue to hurt other people, and it becomes a cycle that people don't know how to break. But what I often think about, just from my perspective, is generationally, where are you teaching the children that are witnessing that? Yeah. And so that becomes it just plays in my mind, what are we teaching a whole generation of children that are now witnessing this? What is going on? And so that's just something I think about.
Last week episode, Ray Smith, the older gentleman I had on the show last week, and he said something very critical. He said that as many doors behind us is still open, and those doors are still open. We must close those doors and heal what happened in the past before we can move forward. And he believes that that's some of the reason why men seek out women, mistresses, to have these affairs with. So let's look at the mental health point of view of this. mentally impacting a woman. Like I said, in my private practice, people are very depressed, crying, anxiety, stress. They losing their hair, they start medication due to a relationship like this. Mentally, what do you think from a woman?
Mentally, for a woman, I would say definitely the "am I good enough" question. I think that, especially if you're in a situation where you're involved with someone who has another relationship, and you have to keep asking yourself, why haven't they left yet? Why haven't they chose me? Why isn't this going anywhere? Why is this situation prolonging? And I think that "am I good enough" starts and manifests in so many different ways, right? So yes, like their mental health, their self-esteem, but the same thing with their work, right? So maybe because they're trying so hard to find their worth, now they're working a whole lot of hours. Now they're mentally exhausted. Now they're stressed out from their job. Now they're starting, because they're always pervaded with this thought, am I good enough? They have that anxiety. They have that worry. They have that false insecurity, right? So I mentioned earlier that one of the could perceive benefits of being with someone who has a relationship is that you get that predictability, right? But at the same time, with that predictability comes a whole nother set of, again, like, why does it continue to have to be this way? So for me, I would say that, am I good enough? That pervasiveness of it and seeing it manifest in all others areas. And I think the secrecy too, right? And at least for me, I don't know a lot of women who come out front and say like, hey, I'm dating a married man, right? Like, I don't know how to, from my perspective at least, I don't know a lot of women who are bringing a married man to the cookout in our generation. So I think that also takes a toll too, and like having to conceal the relationship, not being able to share, or you've been complaining to your girlfriend so much about this married man, they don't want to hear that stuff. So I think it also causes isolation, because I can't share this side of me or this side of my life, or if it's bringing me joy, I can't even share that, because he don't want people to see it, or because, again, like the embarrassment or the shame that may come along with that.
Yeah, I agree with the am I enough question, because you literally can dig yourself into a hole with that. But I also think that it's because in that relationship, because you don't have the whole person, you are not fulfilled in that relationship. Yeah. You're always missing something. And so if you're using that, going back to my earlier point of, you're using that to kind of fill your self-esteem bucket, if you will, you are trying to fill yourself with pieces of someone else. And so you never really get that full feeling. And so now you're trying to pull from other places and fill, yourself in that situation. And you never get out, get back from that relationship what you're putting in. So now you just feel like it's uneven. And now, so then that kind of spirals into, anxiety and depression and guilt even. Because now you're thinking about, like you said, not being able to share, but now you have the guilt of, I can't share this, or I have to conceal this relationship, or, what if the wife or the girlfriend, or, the wife in this case, what if she finds out? What does that mean for me? Or what if others find out that I'm in this situation? My family would never think that I would do something like this, but here I am. Or my friends never would think that I would do something like this, but here I am. And so you kind of, get into that situation of guilt and self-blame. So, all of that kind of can cause someone to kind of spiral into all, different doors and different avenues of, mental health issues that, will never go away unless you kind of are able to remove yourself from that situation.
Just want to focus on guilt. Overwhelming with guilt causes depression. And I think, Kia, you understand what I'm saying right now. Guilt causes depression. Because you soaking in your guilt. And it's going to impact your moods. Okay? So I hope the viewers understand this, because I know millions and millions of women, we were talking across the United States and Canada and other countries that they are suffering from overwhelming of guilt. that is leading to depressed moods. Kia, what are your perspective on the piggyback what they were saying?
Yeah, just to add, I just think like compounded stress does so much to the mind and the body that we don't give it credit for. Like the cortisol hormone like literally is a thing, and it's very powerful. Like it affects our body composition, like how much weight we gain, how much weight we can lose, our metabolism, our quality of sleep, our ability to control your appetite. Like it's so powerful. Stress, that's what I'm talking about. So if you're stressed because of a relationship that you have to hide, or a relationship that you don't feel fulfilled in, or empty promises, because we're talking about deferred dreams and goals. I don't think anybody on this planet thought that they was going to just settle for a married person. I don't think any little girl grows up saying I'm gonna be with a married man. Like you might get to a point where you like, you know, you're bragging about it, but deep down inside, I don't think anyone truly wants it long term. Because you end up realizing what you're not going to have. That person isn't going to spend holidays with you. They're not going to be there for Christmas and Valentine's Day, and probably maybe not for your birthdays, or like, you know, it just depends on what that dynamic is. And so I think all I could think about right now is just the compounded stress and knowing what it does to your body over time, and it's super unhealthy. Like it will affect every quality of your life. If you're losing sleep over time, you absolutely are going to feel less than, or to feel more sad. And over time, the sadness, because we all experience sadness, but over time it can lead to a diagnosed, you know, depression or anxiety, because it's just too much. Like that compounded daily stress is overwhelming, and if you don't take steps to do something about it, which is what Chelsi was saying, it could lead to devastating long-term consequences. Now, I do want to say, like, you know, it can get better, but the issue with mental health is the biggest thing is you have to acknowledge it. And we live in a society where there's still so much difficulty around acknowledging that mental health issues exist, and that it does not mean that you should be ashamed or that there is something wrong with you that you need to hide from the world, because most of us have dealt with some form of a mental health issue, whether it was after you had a child and dealing with the changes of your body and your hormones, or losing a loved one. I mean, like, there's so many things that we're more comfortable acknowledging, but we won't necessarily acknowledge some of these other things around mental health. And then the other aspect, I guess, to me, and it's a really big topic and uncomfortable for some people, is that women of color in our society are often taught from a young age that they're like not at the same level as other women for various reasons, whether it's beauty standards or whatever, and you can get into colorism and just all these things. And so depending on what your beliefs are about you as a woman, your hair type, your body type, your skin color, you add all that into everything else we're talking about, you could, you know, have some huge scars that will take some time to heal. And unfortunately, there are people out here that will see you as a target, and they sometimes know you're dealing with that, and they will target you and know that you're not in the place with the right tools to do a lot to protect yourself, and you end up just kind of falling in with that person and being unfulfilled but not knowing how to get out of it. So,
and I'm glad you said that, because usually people with narcissistic personality disorders target women, or women targeting men with that low self-concept, where you, what I'm hearing you saying right now, it's an easy prey, right? Yeah. So they get involved with a narcissistic person and further damage their self-esteem and self-concept. So very powerful, very powerful. I'm gonna go right in on something, because I hear this so much. It's uncomfortable for me to say this, but I have to say it. It's the podcast show, right? Your generation, the threesomes. It's like, I can't believe what I hear when they come into my office. Like, you know, it's like common. But then I see the mental health impact when they get involved with stuff like that. You know, it totally damaged the marriage. You want to talk about that? It's uncomfortable. Let's talk about it. Let's do it. It's like, so what do you?
I'm gonna be honest. I've seen and heard about both. One is this overindulgence, right? That you just got to feel everything and experience everything, and you have to have everything right now, and you have to be full to the point that you are stuffed. So you have to, if it's sex, we got to have more. We got to have double. We got to add people. I want to experience all the pleasure, right? So I think that's definitely one aspect of it. It's like the gluttony, but I also have a secret suspicion that I don't think a lot of people want to do it. I think that it's something that they believe their partner wants to do, so they convince themselves to do it. Mm-hmm. That's also my suspicion, is that it's happening, it's common, but I don't believe that everyone who's doing it is doing it because that's what they truly want. I believe that that's something that their partner wants, that it will make their partner happy or their relationship more fulfilled, or having the mindset, oh, I know, he already wants to cheat or wants to experience somebody else, so let me control that, right? Let me bring that person into our relationship. So yes, they're getting their needs met, but I also have like a false sense of control over it. That's my thought. I think it's the overindulgence. I think that not everybody who's having it wants to. I think it's a lot more of that people pleasing, that self-esteem of like, what can I do to make this person happy, rather than just accepting the fact that I am enough. I'm going to do everything I can, and if they're not happy, that's because of them and not because of me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think it's the control aspect. You literally took the words right out of my mouth. I think it's a lot of times it is from the male's perspective. They want that in the relationship. They see that as a fantasy. They see that as something that they want. And so, again, to prevent him from going outside of the relationship, it's like, okay, I will allow this, but on my terms and within the confounds. And I'm here, and so I know what's happening. And so then it becomes an issue when it goes beyond that. It's like, okay, it was only supposed to be this one time, but now you're asking for it all the time. Or now, you guys are messaging separately. It used to be in the group chat, but now we're I see that you guys are talking outside of this and kind of starting something else. So I think it's when that feeling of control goes away, that's where you kind of get into the mental health piece of like, okay, what did I do to my relationship? Because I've now opened the door to this. I've now welcomed this into my relationship. And I thought that I was the boss, and I thought that, it was, me being bossy because I'm the one that's suggesting it, or I'm the one bringing it up. But really what I've done is just made it easier for him to obtain. I've opened the door. I've shown that I'm okay with this. Yeah. And so now that's where, it comes in of, okay, now I'm feeling depressed. Now I'm back into square one of, am I enough? Because why do we need this other person or other people or whatever have you? Like, why is, this experience with me not enough for you? And so then, the whole thing unravels and getting into depressive states and anxiety and things like that, worrying about, what else is going to be the next thing that he wants that I feel like I have to do in order to keep this relationship alive.
Yeah. You all just made some like really spot on reflections. So I think just the only thing I could really add is that I think sometimes once someone agrees and says yes, they don't really know what the yes means. They don't actually know what they have just now opened up. It's one of those things that once you do, you can't take it back. And you have no control. You thought you had control.
There is no control.
In saying yes. But then once you do it, you have no control on how did that male experience it? How did you as that female experience it? Is it that you're bringing another male into the situation? You bring another female into the situation? What if your male partner wants to bring another female, but you're like, oh, but why can't I bring another male? You're now opening yourself up to so many different things that you did not think through before with that one yes. And so you didn't ask this question. You asked about threesomes, but what I'm also seeing is this this narrative around, we're poly now, and we can have a partner on the side, and there's all these different rules. And I've actually seen it play out in real life where people do not follow the rules, or the rules change over time, or what people try to do is act like humans can fit their hearts into this checkbox list of things. That's not how we operate. And so I think you didn't ask about poly, but that's another thing that people are now, they're going further than the threesomes. People are now saying, oh, well, it's okay. Like we have our main partner or our main, spouse, and that we can now have a person on the side and they only fulfill this particular role. And a lot of people are trying to embrace this new lifestyle, but I know very few people where it has worked out long-term successfully. I have seen so many people become hurt by these arrangements, and the hurt is way more than they can ever acknowledge because they said yes. Right. So the yes is what I'm saying is people do not know what they're signing on to. It's like that one yes opens up so many other things that I just wish people would take a little bit more time to think about it before agreeing to do it. But then people feel judged. Like I've actually, I know someone who has felt judged with like a type of conversation like this. And it's like, well, we're just trying to have a conversation because you need to think about it before it goes further. But people feel so judged and then they feel isolated. So then they don't tell people. And then they're stuck with these like complex feelings and not really getting the support they need to untangle themselves from it. So
I'm glad you triggered my thoughts. I'm going to share a case that this lady told her husband, you need to go find a girlfriend because I'm about to find a boyfriend. And they ended up in my office. So this what happened. So she wanted counseling now because it's not going right for her, but definitely going right for him. Okay? So she brings him in. And, guys don't like counseling. They really don't like to come to counseling. But I'm talking to him. Say, hey, just be real. I told her to leave. I said, so what's really going on? You could talk to me like I'm your boy. Let's talk. He's like, man, she's tripping. She told me to go get a girlfriend. And she want to have this threesome, all this experiences and stuff, whatever. To keep my wife, he had to do it. He said he was so sick he was throwing up because he said, I didn't want to share my wife, but she forced me to do this. Now the guy that she was dating don't want to be with her anymore. He said, the young lady that I have, I love her and I don't want to give her up now. She's in my office depressed about what happened, but it was her idea to do this. She's the one depressed now. They ended up getting a divorce, but it backfired on her.
Absolutely, because that's another thing. You cannot control the human heart.
You cannot.
So you told him to go get a girlfriend, but you did not factor in the fact that he could have a genuine connection with another person. And you also may have told him that because you wanted to feel less guilty about your desire to have an experience with another man. And so people often are not honest about I think both of you highlight this, you're not honest about why you're actually, bringing up this arrangement. So her motives were different from the very beginning. It really was, she probably just wanted to have a relationship with someone else, but felt it was only fair to let him do the same thing. But it was devastating consequences, right?
Right, yeah. Healthy family, I think 3 kids, very healthy, and he was happy, and she came home one day. She was hanging out with a new girlfriend. Her girlfriend was doing it. So her girlfriend wanted to bring her in with her husband. And that's how it all started. So both marriages are doomed. The girlfriend, and right? Because they was their idea. They wanted to do this, so they lost both men. They did it, but he did it because he loves his wife, and like you said, I think you said it, Chelsi, that they don't want to lose their mate. So I'm going to continue this behavior because to please my mate. Yeah. So think about the mental toll for a second. Think about the mental toll on that person. Like me, I don't want to share my woman. I love my woman. I don't want you don't touch my woman, you know what I'm saying? And nobody's not going to touch me, period, right? But look at the mental toll on that person. Think about the nights you lay in the bed crying. That vivid thought for a second. I don't know if you guys experienced that before. someone cheating on you or hurting your heart, breaking your heart with another woman. But think about the mental toll on that person. Yeah. Think about your mom, right? You have to go to work. Mm-hmm. You got to come home and care for your kids. And you know that your husband is out there with another woman. Mm-hmm. And she's happy. The other day, it was a message sent to me. This lady on TikTok was celebrating because she was a side piece. I'm not lying to you guys. They sent this to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching this TikTok. I'm like, what? Mm-hmm. She's like, I know I'm a side piece, and he takes very good care of me. Mm-hmm. She was on TikTok. Explain this. I mean, I'm flabbergasted. Yeah. I need to understand this because I deal with this in my private practice. And sometimes I sit there and look at individuals. The first thing coming to my mind is cognitive dissonance. Mm-hmm. You're doing behaviors that you're trying to find some truth in it to make it okay, to make it resonate within you that I could actually do this behavior. And I'm okay with it. But you're lying to yourself. Yeah. Oh, and eventually, those lies going to catch up with you. Mm-hmm. So please help me with this social media stuff. This is wild.
I wish I could have an easy answer, but what came to mind with this discussion was, can you all picture like an iceberg? Like if let's say, you're somewhere in the Arctic, somewhere you see an iceberg, and on top you see this thing, right? And it looks beautiful, you look ice sculptures, all this stuff. What people don't realize underneath the surface of an iceberg, it's huge, it's miles. We've all heard about the story of the Titanic hitting an iceberg. They couldn't see what's underneath. That's all I could think about when you're telling me someone's bragging about being a side piece. There's layers and layers beneath the surface of why they are comfortable bragging about being a side piece. And it's not meant to judge or tear them down. All I could think about is what happened to you. What happened to you to make what type of family did you grow up with? What type of relationship did you have with your own father or other males in your life? That's all I could think about with that question. And so I don't know all the answers to it, but I know it's so complex and layered because, like I said before, I just really think that most people are not comfortable with that, but they convince themselves that, that cognitive behavioral piece, like you try to figure out how to justify your behaviors, your thoughts, your feelings. You try to make them work together, but they probably don't. And so then people brag, and then social media is now a place where people do things for likes, for clout, and for viral moments, and for, their 30 seconds of fame. And I even know people that, have gone on judge shows and, these all these different shows. And it was great at the time because if you all know anyone who's ever done this, they pay you to go out to the show, to be on the show. And you get a nice little experience. Like, let's say the judge show is in Chicago, you get to explore Chicago, all this stuff. And now that recording is out there, you can never take it back. So in the moment, it was nice. You go, you get some laughs, whatever y'all going through, if it's a relationship issue or court case or whatever. And it was great in the moment. But 10 years down the line, that show could still be aired to this day. And I literally know someone that has happened to, and they regret it. They can't take it back. Their children want to know why was their family member on that show talking about this, because kids now have way more access than I did. Oh, yeah. I remember having a cell phone in high school or something like that, but there are kids now that have cell phones at 5 and 4, maybe 3. It depends. Everybody's dynamic is different and why the child needs to have a cell phone, so no judgment there. But the point is they have things at their fingertips that a lot of people, and even our generation and the ones before us, that did not have access to. So I say all that to say, I don't think people are even thinking, because they are operating in a way where they have so many layers, mass layers of how they truly feel, that they can pretend that that's actually okay.
Yeah, I think it's the justification. It's like that post is not necessarily, it could not necessarily be for the viewers, but to convince yourself, well, this is why this is okay, because he buys me all these things. He takes care of me. Oh, and it's almost like having a pros and cons list that you're trying to convince yourself, and I don't have to cook and clean, and I don't have to worry about his kids, and I don't have to cater to his every need. And, he still takes care of X, Y, and Z for me. And that's enough for me. And I'm okay with that. It's convincing yourself that's okay. And then also trying to go out into social media to get affirmation that is okay. And it's like, yeah, like people agree with that. They like it, they post, they, share, they comment, and, it's a way to kind of affirm your delusion almost of like, yeah, that makes sense. And so now you have all these other people kind of agreeing with you. And so now you're in a space temporarily of feeling like, you know what, this is okay. And I'm okay with this. But like you said, the iceberg, it catches up with you of all of this stuff under the surface. Eventually it comes, to the surface, and you have to deal with that. And you have to deal with those decisions and what the consequences are.
I'll say two things. One, the first thing I said, city girls. City girls have a job that has a song that says, I don't work jobs, I am a jobs, right? Meaning that their relationships are transactional. So everything has to be this transaction, right? And I think that's also a large part of what we're seeing in our generation is not having a clear definitions of what relationships are. So everything has to be a transaction. Everything has to be, what's the benefit for me? I have to get something from everything. So I think, again, pop culture, like I'll always reference back to, but also like this skewed definition of what a relationship is. Like it's not a one-off, oh, he gave me this or he paid my bills, like, and that's okay. Like, no, that's not what a relationship is. It's not this transactional one piece off. And I think that, again, our generation has been, I don't know if it's, them trying to correct their parents or their grandparents or trying to do something different, but they really have this warped sense of understanding of what a relationship is. And it's not that. Like, if you're thinking just about, what a person can do for you, you're thinking all the way here when relationships start all the way at the bottom, right? So I think that's also a large part of it, is this warped understanding.
This show is not for likes, okay? It is not. This is from my heart because mental health, as for me as well, is very important to me, okay? And I have to do something. It's only one of me. It's not that many black males in mental health. And I was stretching myself so thin that my doctor told me I couldn't work for like a month. I became so overwhelmed because my goal was trying to help everyone and I couldn't do it. So let's look at this for a second. This is a story. Person came into my office. She was a junior in college and she met this guy. He was a little older. I think he was like 26, 27. He was an engineer. And he just swept her off her feet. The perfect mate for her. They dated for 2 years. She didn't know that he was married. She became pregnant and told him. And that's when the truth started coming out. You have to get an abortion because I'm married. And she was so heartbroken. She was so in love with this guy. And she stayed in a relationship. But wait a minute, there's the twist to it. She had 2 more kids with them. And she was really depressed in my office. She loved this guy. And I'm listening to her. He's still with his wife. He won't leave. And his wife knew that he had, 3 kids with this young lady. You want to talk about that very briefly? I mean, what do you think was going through her mind? I mean, I don't know. For being a male, I'm trying to understand this and dissect this. And sometimes I'm treating from a clinical level, but I want to look at, but why?
Well, remember I was saying, she didn't know. So in this particular case, she did not know. And then her heart was in it. And once your heart is in it and you are completely attached to someone, to me, this is where you have to rely on help that's bigger than you. And I don't know if this person believed in God or what her support system was like, but to detach yourself from something like that, if you thought this was the man of your dreams, he swept you off your feet, to your knowledge, he is single, you're single, you all are now coming together 2 years. You've fallen in love with this person, and now you're expecting a child. And I didn't know at the time, before you continue with the story, but in my mind, I was like, oh, if she loves him and she's so excited, I think it's going to be a really hard time for her to not choose to have her child. So it's not like she had that child and 2 more. But at that point, you now have brought life into this world. And so now you're like, well, I can't separate, because you keep finding all these excuses, right? Like, well, if my first child is by him, my second child should just be by him. Because, well, if my second child by my third child, and I see people have said these things to me before. Well, I want my children to have the same father. It doesn't, even though the father is literally living a lie, you now are so engulfed in this situation and commitment that you're like, well, at least my children have the same father. And your sense of worth and value has now decreased so much. It's like, well, I at least did this for my children. They can say they have the same father. I'm doing the best I can for them. I didn't know initially. And then you almost, I don't know for sure, but this is what I suspect, is like you tell yourself, well, maybe I deserve this. Or this is enough and I can settle for this. And maybe one day he'll leave. So I don't know. That's a really complex case. I want to see what you all think, but it's just really disheartening. And last thing for you as a provider, that countertransference is real. If you hear enough stories like this, it will start to really affect you. So that's why your doctor recommended taking that time off, because it's real.
Chelsi, mental toll, your mental health, dealing with this now. Let's say you're the wife. Yeah. Your mental health will be what now? My husband got 3 kids. And I have 2 with you.
So you're thinking about now I'm feeling ashamed, because now other people are going to know my husband has, 2, 3 other children. And now I have the whispers and I have the gossip going around me of like, oh my goodness, why does she stay? And all of these things. I feel like I have to defend myself. I feel resentment towards him, because it's like, why did you put me in this situation to begin with? And now I feel like I'm stuck. Like I feel like I can't go anywhere. So then that leads into, depression, because now I feel like I'm stuck. This is the best that I can do. Maybe this is this what, if you believe in a higher power, is this what God had for me? Is this the life that I'm supposed to live? So, you literally can just sit and sulk in those thoughts, in those depressive thoughts. From both the wife side and from the mistress side of, is this what I'm really supposed to have? And is this all that I'm good enough for? And, that kind of, releases itself into other areas of your life. Now it could be impacting your relationship with your children, because maybe now for the mistress, I love my child, but I had you as a result of this relationship that's causing a toll on me. So, you have ill feelings toward the children. That could impact your work life, your family life, other relationships. It's hard for you now to trust other people and to build other relationships and to maybe get into a healthy relationship. At this point, you don't even know what that looks like. And so you're going back to what you know. And so maybe even if you do get out of that situation, you keep finding yourself in the same pattern, because that's all that you know, and that's all that you've seen, and that's all that you've accepted. Right.
First thing that came to mind for me was heartbreak on all ends. Like, I couldn't imagine. First, you find out the person isn't the person who you thought. So now it's blame for you. I should have known. I should have done my research. I should have done all these things. I think about the wife, because it's one thing to have an affair, because those can be broken. Now that you have a child, you are linked forever to this person. Like, there's no leaving her and starting over. You're linked with her forever. As a wife, I have to now reckon with, do I let all the siblings get to know each other? Now, if the other child's going to come in, how am I going to look at this sweet face of a baby and treat it, right? Like, instinctually, like, okay, yes, I'm going to be loving. I'm not going to harm this child. But to have that mental work, that anxiety of that, to have this woman's child now in our house, that's a lot, right? So, like, the anxiety of it, I just think of, like, the constant cycle of thoughts. Like, of course, the depression that we think about, I feel for both of them. And I feel, like I say, as a wife, like, maybe she tolerated the affair to, like Chelsi said, to keep or maintain her lifestyle. But now we're intrinsically linked. And at some point, even if I'm angry, I have to accept the situation, right? So that's a whole other thing. So I'm depressed. I have all these thoughts, but now I literally have to take this pill and swallow it so that I can be around these children or even be around my children. That's what I really thought about. It's like the heartbreak on both ends, and the fact that for the wife, like the hope is over. And I think that one thing that we haven't talked about, losing hope, that's the most expensive thing to lose. I feel like we try so hard to hold on to hope, and I felt like for the girl who didn't know that he was married, that's why she didn't want to leave, because hope. No one wants to lose and abandon all hope. As women, we are extremely hopeful creatures, hopeful that we can change people, hopeful that things to work out right. And for us to finally give that up, I feel like we've given life up because we hang on to our hope. So that's what I really thought about, like the hope and all of that.
And just one quick comment, because what Capri just mentioned about that hope, it's just that I think it's so important that we touch on how that mental toll can get so high. And if you lose that last thread of hope, that's why we have a high suicidality rate right now. Because unfortunately, we don't like to talk about this, but a lot of people are taking their lives because they have not figured out a way to deal with this high emotional toll. And so I just wanted to just make space to acknowledge that that's something we have got to figure out how to acknowledge that's happening within our community, as particularly the Black community, that we're not always talking about, is that we are taking our lives as a result of so much pain and hurt and anger. And I just feel like we need to talk about that more, because the mental toll, yes, it's going to reveal itself in one way or another. And people take it out on children, people take it out on their bodies, people take it out in all different types of ways. But there are people taking their lives because they can no longer deal with the emotional toll.
And I'm going to close with this last question. It's a quick story. I was a former school psychologist, and I was called over to the middle school. I'm not going to mention the school setting. The young ladies was in the back hall giving oral sex to their boyfriends. And when they called my phone, I'm 12, 13 years old. And I'm like, what? And I had to go and we had to talk. All the counselors and the social workers and the psychologists, we was all over the middle school to really dissect what was going on. Now I'm the only Black male there. It was two Black women, but I'm the only Black male, and the rest was, white Caucasian counselors. And this was sad. This young lady said, I think she was 13 years old, I'm gonna do whatever to do to please my. What did she say? Let me phrase it right. I'm gonna do whatever it needs to be to please my man. If he wants me to do this, I'm going to do it. And I grabbed my bags and I walked out the gym room and went back to my office. Because what do you say as a therapist when you hear a young child say this? First thing came to my mind is social learning theory. You learn it from where? Right? I heard that somewhere before. I'm going to do whatever needs to be done to please my man. Wait a minute, he's a boy. First of all, let's start there. When I heard that, I just gathered my stuff and I walked right out the gymnasium and went right back into my office, got in my car and drove back over to the high school. What do you say? What do you say to something like that?
Yeah, I'd say unfortunately, I feel like our youth, and this is even exacerbated even more now with social media and kids having access to any and everything under the sun. And how they're taking in that information and being influenced. But basically, like, children are growing up way too fast. Like, when I was in middle school, elementary, was not even thinking, about this. So I think times have just changed so much. And because they have the ability to kind of mix and mingle with the older, social media or, children on TikTok. I have nieces and nephews, young, godsons that are on TikTok, all the time. So they're seeing all of this and kind of trying to emulate that in their life because they think, oh, this is what it means to be grown. This is what it means to be, an adult, or, this is like, I'm older, I'm mature. And so you try to emulate the things that you see and kind of repeat the things that you hear. And so, just growing up way too fast and not realizing that, you don't have to do those things. It's like, as a 12, 13-year-old, like, you don't even have to be worried or concerned about that. Like, there's so much more life to live and there's plenty of time to do that. But I think children just see, they see these things and feel like they have to do it. And, they want to be grown and they want to be accepted. If it's, other students that are doing or other girls that are doing, it's like, oh, I want to, be on the end or do, what other people are doing as well to feel accepted or to not, feel isolated. It's a lot of just like our, our society and kind of what we allow to, be present in the minds of our children.
Yeah, first red flag for me, my CPS hat went off because how you know how to do that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, my CPS hat is that because I'm sorry, Children's Protective Services, right?
Okay.
So I worked as an investigator for a while, right? That's red flag number one because no one comes out the womb knowing how to do oral sex.
Right.
Who taught you? Who showed you how to perform it? And then if you saw your mom or anyone else in your house do that, another CPS red flag. So for me, that's red flag number one. It's figuring out, again, this isn't innate to a child. Something has happened. What has happened in this child's life, in this child's household, or what have they witnessed? So that was my first red flag. Second red flag, unfortunately, this story didn't surprise me, right? So when Kia and I worked together, that's something that happened very commonly, whether it's in a school, whether they are having sex with multiple people and get recorded. Like, so for me, it's unfortunate, but it's common. And I think what we have to ask ourselves is, where's that value and that love coming from? And then how do we begin to teach that young person that the only thing you have to do is be yourself? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we all struggle with. I can at least say for me as a woman, I get so caught up in the doing and forget about the being. At the 12-year-old, you could tell them not to worry about boys. Mm-hmm. They're going to worry anyway, right? Yeah. But helping them to understand that, like, you don't get value in what you do. You get value in as who you are. And if you feel like you have to do or prove, that means that the relationship isn't valuable to you at all. It's something that shouldn't be fulfilling. It is hard to get a 12-year-old to see that, but that's also why I believe in the importance of mentoring, because there's some conversations a school social worker can have with them they're not going to get through, their parents can have with them they're not going to get through, but to have another neutral adult, safe, trusted adult in their life, that will be the person that will help them begin to understand that, to begin to help them to fill their love cup up and help them to understand, again, it's more about who you are rather than what you do.
Okay. Yeah, I'll say, I think Capri just articulated it. Mm-hmm. It's not so much that it's surprising, because one thing we have to accept is that adolescents, their bodies are rapidly changing. They do have emotions and thoughts that they may not understand what's happening to them, and so it's not uncommon for them to have sexual thoughts, even if they weren't taught these things, but to act on them, and to be comfortable acting on them, and to say that type of statement, that's concerning because it shows there's some socialization that happens somewhere that you're okay with this. But I think just two things as a society, we want to know how to respond to something like that. We got to first address that we actually do need comprehensive sexual education.
Let's talk about it.
We just have to acknowledge that, because that's how you end up with teenage pregnancies, because they're experiencing things in their bodies and they want to sometimes act on these things, but they have no idea what the consequences might be, like being caught at school and now what could happen like that. But then the other part is just too, like, if you are comfortable now doing this in your school, but you're doing it in secret because you're like behind the whatever, there's something going on internally where you kind of know this isn't right. but you also feel like
Yeah.
you have to do it. There's something going on where you feel like you have to do it. And so I think until we address with our young people, because it ties to your earlier question, which is why do people do these things? It's because there's something in you that's telling you to turn off your switch that knows it's not right, and that to figure out how to turn it off and move past in this direction. And I believe because you're trying to fill a void, that something is missing. We don't know this young lady had a father or another positive male role model. But to Capri's point, that mentoring and having these types of conversations is so important. And if it's not going to happen at home, it's got to happen somewhere, which is a whole nother conversation.
And I'll lastly add the human trafficking part too, right? Because let's talk about that statement. I'll do whatever I have to keep, right? So I'm curious to know, was there some kind of force or coercion or manipulation behind that led to that sexual act? And if you're willing to do that to keep your man happy, what else are you willing to do? Again, one of the other things I'm passionate about, I just had to bring up, is that like a lot of times as adults, we don't think that, oh, she just whatever. But it's like, no, that's a serious red flag, because that means that if you're not already in that life, it's highly likely that someone can coerce you to going down that path. That's where your mindset is already.
And I know my producer, I'm sorry, producer, I'm sorry. I got to say one more thing, and we're going to wrap it up. Several situations that the mother allowed her daughter in high school to go stay with her boyfriend's house overnight on the weekend. As women, can you please explain that, please? Because I see this leading to why you are a side piece or mistress now, because it's low self-concept or something is going on in your life that I'm looking at, where does it start? Why do people have these beliefs and these behaviors? Then it leads to mental health. You're in my office. And the reason why I'm talking about this, it's a stigma in our community about mental health. And people don't know where mental health derives. We're explaining it to you, viewers. It starts with basic stuff like this, leads to chronic mental health issues. Yeah. So you hear a mom telling her daughter it's okay to stay at your boyfriend's house for the weekend while you're in high school. What do you think about that? Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I would trip out. Yeah. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I don't know. I'm not sure.
For me, it's an absolute no. Never. Okay. Forget boyfriend. You ain't going to your cousin's house all weekend. Okay? Right. No. But I'll say two things. I'll say one is that some people do live in a rosy, glassy world where they assume that if that child is going over their parents' house, that they'll have constant supervision. They live in this rosy, glassy world, right? And I don't think, as Black people, we don't have that opportunity, right? Like, we don't have that choice. We're always, thinking about the worst that can happen, thinking about prevention. We police our children very high because we know if we don't police them, then somebody else will, thinking about the actual police, right? So I think that some people have that opportunity to do that. But for me, it's a no. It's absolutely not. Never, not even your cousin's house for the weekend. So for me, though, but I also think about, too, like, for some mothers who are experiencing trauma, who just need a break and will try to get it whatever way, they gladly accept that, and they're okay with it, because for them, that's their only outlet, because they haven't had their mental health addressed, because they don't have healthy coping skills. They'll send their child with whoever the first person who says that they will go.
I also think about the mother in that situation. I wonder what her experience was like as a teen as well in high school. Maybe they had overprotective parents, because we do, as a Black community, police very heavily. So is it like, she was a rebellious child, and so it's like, well, if I let her do these things, then she won't feel like she has to go around or sneak or do these things, because things are going to happen either way. And so if that sense of control almost of like, okay, if I let you do this, if I have make that decision to like open the door for you, then, I'm, trying to control the situation. But then also, I am trying to be the type of parent that I would have wanted. Maybe I, wanted my parents to be the cool parent and let me stay at my friend's house or do X, Y, and Z with my boyfriend or whatever have you. So they could be trying to parent the way they wanted to be parented. I think in that situation, kind of thinking to like the mother of like what was kind of her thought process of like why that was okay or why, she would allow that. And I mean, that is a good point about, maybe there's something traumatic happening, in the mother's life or that has happened in the mother's life. And so that kind of leads to that decision. But yeah, in that situation, I more so think about kind of what was the thought process for the mother.
Anything you have to say?
I think they articulated pretty well. The only thing is just that people are afraid of losing everyone, whether it's a spouse, a child, or whoever. And so some people feel like, well, what if they run away? If I don't say yes, what if I lose the relationship or connection I have with my child? And so sometimes I think we're living in times where parents are hurting, and so they're trying to figure out how to keep certain relationships with their children, and they kind of say yes to things without thinking about what the yes means. And I think it could just lead to one thing after another and not thinking about the generational consequences of that yes. So.
And the yes to what you're condoning, right? Like you're saying yes, but so are you condoning that they're going to go over there and have sex together or do drugs or do whatever? Like what are you, like Kia said, like what are you saying yes to? What is your expectation of what happened? And then if you say yes, then what message is that sent to your daughter and then your children's children and children's children? That's what I think about as well. I mean, and it could be innocent where they are studying, but yeah, I just think about that message.
About the young male's mother or father. It's I'm sorry. I couldn't imagine my son telling me in 11th grade that his girlfriend's coming to stay for the weekend. I would lose my mind. I'm sorry. And he's a boy. And I'm not trying, double standards. We all know the double standards, right? I'm not going to allow my son to bring no young lady over my house over the weekend. That's not going to happen.
That's your value.
And don't you ever ask me that again. Matter of fact, I'm going to drive you over here and talk to her parents. Matter of fact, you can't talk to her anymore.
Right, because she want to come out. And her parents said she could.
Well, you can't talk to her anymore. Absolutely not. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm old school, but when I hear stories like this, I sit and like, what?
And I think that parents are naive, or they choose to be naive. I think a lot of parents choose to be naive and choose to assume the best when they shouldn't. But my husband, when he was in high school, he ran into situations like that where the girlfriends of his parents would try to invite him over, like, oh yeah, you could spend a night. And his parents were like, absolutely not. And I've also, with that control thing, I've heard of parents allowing that and providing the condoms for them to be able to do that so that if they do it, it'll be done safely. So I think it goes back to like, everybody's different, but if they say yes, it's because of that control aspect or because that naiveness. Oh, well, yeah, we'll let him stay over, but he'll stay in the basement and he'll stay downstairs, and like they'll be, it's that they choose to be naive. And the last thing I'll say, there's not enough parenting resources or classes, especially when it comes to how to effectively parent a teenager, especially if you are middle income or even upper income. It's not enough resources. It's not in the access to be able to understand as a parent what you're doing.
And the reason I brought these topics up because it leads to behaviors in adulthood.
Definitely.
And it leads to, I'm a side piece now. It leads to this stuff, right? And that's the only reason why I brought it up. So thank you guys. Thank you for the profound, elegant conversation. Thank you so much. And my viewers, the word of the week. One of the most effective ways to foster self-love is by showering ourselves with the love we often fantasize about receiving from others. So thank you, viewers. I appreciate you for listening. I thank you guys. I'll see you next week, and we're going to summarize this topic. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe, and follow us on social media.